Hello there, and welcome to the Sleepy Science Channel. Tonight, we're stepping into the ancient and astonishing world of ferns. These are plants that were already spreading across the earth long before flowers appeared, and long before the first dinosaurs ever walked beneath their leaves. At first glance, they can seem familiar. Soft, green, and almost ordinary. But look a little closer, and they become something far stranger. Ferns unfurl in spirals. They multiply without seeds. They can live on cliffs, in treetops, beside waterfalls, and in the cracks of old stone. Some can survive fire. Some can return from drought. And some make whole forests feel as if they belong to another age. The deeper you wander into their world, the more remarkable they become. Beneath each frond lies a story of survival, reinvention, and deep time. These are not simply background plants. They are survivors from an older Earth, still thriving all around us. If you enjoy these gentle journeys, I invite you to like, subscribe, or share a thought below. It helps others find their way here too, one sleepy soul at a time. But for now, all you need to do is settle in. Let your shoulders soften. Let your breathing slow. And allow your mind to drift as we explore this ancient green world together. Let's begin. Ferns were already ancient when the first dinosaurs appeared. Long before tyrannosaurs, long before flowering meadows, and long before grasslands spread across the continents, fern lineages were already part of Earth's green world. They belong to a very old branch of plant life, one that helped shape landscapes in deep prehistory. That is part of what makes them so arresting. When you stand beside a fern today, you are not looking at a modern novelty. You are looking at a survivor from a world that predates the age of giant reptiles. Over immense stretches of time, climates shifted, continents drifted, and mass extinctions came and went, yet these plants endured. Their exact forms have changed, of course, and many ancient relatives are gone, but the broader lineage remained. That gives every frond a strange kind of gravity. It is not just green decoration by a path. It is a living connection to a planet so old and unfamiliar that even the dinosaurs arrived late. Ferns make forests without flowers, fruits, or seeds. That sounds almost impossible at first, because we are used to thinking that successful plants need blossoms, pollen carried by bees, and seeds packed into cones or fruit. Ferns prove otherwise. They built their place in the world with an older strategy. Instead of flowers, they make spores. Instead of fruits, they trust wind, moisture, patience, and enormous numbers. In damp forests, that approach can work so well, but whole slopes, gullies, and ravines become thick with fronds. The result is a plant world that feels lush and complete without any petals at all. There is something almost startling about that. A landscape can look full, layered, and abundant while using none of the reproductive machinery most people associate with modern greenery. It reminds you that the flowering world we know is only one version of success. Some ferns launch their spores like tiny spring-loaded catapults. On the underside of certain fronds, the spores sit inside microscopic cases called sporangia. As these dry, a ring of cells known as the annulus begins to tighten under strain. Water loss changes the tension in the walls until the structure suddenly snaps back. In that instant, the case bursts open and the spores are flung outward with surprising force. It is a genuine mechanical launch, driven by built-up tension in living tissue. No muscles are involved, no nervous system, no animal movement, yet the result is swift and dramatic. Under magnification, it looks like a trap springing. bat is part of the wonder of ferns. They are often described as calm woodland plants, but tucked beneath a frond is a tiny ballistic device firing future generations into the air. The scale is small, but the ingenuity is immense. A single leaf can hold thousands of these little launch systems, each one waiting for dryness, timing, and one sudden release. Tree ferns can make a rainforest feel prehistoric. There are moments in some wet forests when the whole landscape seems to slip backward in time, and tree ferns are often the reason. They rise on shaggy trunks crowned with huge umbrellas of fronds, creating silhouettes that feel older than the modern world. Some species can reach impressive heights, turning what many people imagine as a low plant into something almost architectural. Yet their trunks are not made the way a typical tree is made. They do not build wood in the familiar sense. Instead, the upright stem is supported by dense tissues and masses of roots, which gives the whole plant a strange, fibrous strength. In misty valleys or tropical ravines, these forms can dominate the scene. You do not need imagination to feel transported. They genuinely change the atmosphere of a place. Among them, the rainforest stops feeling merely lush and starts feeling ancient, as if some older chapter of Earth's history has never fully ended. Ferns once helped cloak Earth in giant swamp forests. In deep geological time, vast wet lowlands spread across parts of the planet, and ancient fern relatives were among the plants that helped fill them with dense vegetation. These were not always the exact same kinds growing today, but they belonged to the broader fern-rich world that shaped those primeval landscapes. Towering growth, waterlogged ground, heavy air, and endless green made those swamps some of the most influential ecosystems in Earth history. Over immense spans of time, fallen plant matter built up in soggy conditions where decay was incomplete. That buried carbon was slowly transformed, helping create many of the coal deposits humans would much later dig from the ground. So, when you look at a fern today, you are also looking toward a story tied to ancient atmosphere, buried forests, and the energy history of civilization. These plants are not just decorative descendants of the past. Their lineage helped leave signatures in rock that changed the human future. Some ferns can live on bare rock where little else survives. It can seem as though a fern must belong to rich woodland soil, but some species are far tougher and more opportunistic than that picture suggests. They can establish themselves in cracks of stone, on cliff faces, and across surfaces that look almost barren. In most places, there may be very little soil at all. The plant makes use of tiny pockets of dust, moisture, and organic debris that gather in crevices over time. A little shade helps. Once established, the fronds can make a hostile place look unexpectedly alive. That ability is part of their quiet magic. They do not always wait for ideal conditions. They exploit the smallest opening and turn hard surfaces green. Seeing one growing from rock can feel almost improbable, as though the plant has found a way to root in pure stone. It is a lesson in persistence, precision, and patient survival. Fern leaves begin as tight spirals called fiddleheads. Before the frond spreads into lacework, it starts as a curled coil wound tightly upon itself. This shape is called a fiddlehead, and it is one of the most distinctive forms in botany. The unfolding is not random. It follows a patterned mode of growth known as cercinate venation, where the tip remains protected inside the spiral as the leaf develops. That protection matters because the growing end is tender and vulnerable. By keeping it tucked inward, the plant shields its most delicate tissue during the earliest stage of expansion. Then, slowly, the coil loosens. Segment by segment, the frond reveals its final form. Watching that happen can be oddly mesmerizing. It feels deliberate, almost ceremonial, like a green scroll unrolling from another age. Many plants grow leaves. Very few do it with this level of drama. The spiral gives ferns a visual signature that is both elegant and ancient, which may be one reason people remember them so vividly. Ferns can grow in deserts, treetops, rivers, and walls. One reason these plants are more fascinating than many people expect is that they refuse to stay in one neat ecological box. Yes, many love cool, damp woods, but that is only part of the story. Some species cope with dry country and can endure long spells of drought. Some live high on tree branches, catching water and debris from the air while never touching the ground. Some are rooted in stream edges or wet places shaped by constant flow. Others appear in mortarlines, old wells, ruined stone, and shady city corners where almost nobody thinks to look for botanical drama. This range makes the group feel restless and inventive. There is no single fern world. Instead, there are many. A person may meet one in a rainforest, another in a rocky canyon, and another between bricks behind a train station. The family resemblance remains, but the settings keep changing, which makes them feel adaptable in a way that is genuinely thrilling. A fern can begin life as a plantlet shaped like a heart. One of the most surprising things about these plants is that the familiar leafy form is not the whole story. After a spore lands in the right damp place, it does not immediately grow into a miniature frond. Instead, it first becomes a tiny, flat, delicate structure called a propolis, often shaped a little like a small green heart. Most people never notice this stage at all. It can be so slight that it disappears into moss, soil, or rock film. Yet this hidden phase changes how you think about fern life. The plant you admire in a woodland is only one chapter in a cycle that includes another body entirely. On that tiny heart-shaped surface, the next generation begins. In a sense, the grand arching fronds of a future fern start from something soft, almost secret, and easily overlooked. It is a remarkable reminder that some of nature's oldest dramas begin at a scale small enough to vanish beneath your shoe. The world holds thousands of fern species, and many still surprise botanists. Even now, with centuries of collecting and classification behind us, ferns continue to complicate the tidy picture people expect from plant science. There are thousands of known species across the world, and they show extraordinary variety in form, habitat, texture, and life strategy. Some are instantly recognizable. Others are so subtle that telling them apart can challenge specialists. New species are still described, especially in tropical regions and remote mountains where plant diversity is immense and underexplored. On top of that, fern relationships can be complicated by hybridization and unusual genetics, which means the family tree is not always straightforward. That ongoing uncertainty is part of the appeal. These are ancient plants, yet they are not fully finished as a subject of discovery. They still hold puzzles. They still force experts to look closer. That is a wonderful thing to realize. A plant group this old might seem as if it should be fully known by now, yet it still has the power to surprise science. Ferns are vascular plants with true roots, stems, and leaves. That matters more than it may seem. A moss can make a stone look green, but a fern is built with an internal transport system that moves water and dissolved minerals through the plant and sugars back the other way. It has roots that anchor and absorb, stems that support and connect, and leaves that can spread wide to gather light. In other words, this is not a primitive smear of greenery clinging to damp ground. It is a fully organized land plant, engineered for life above the soil. That design helped its ancestors take part in one of the great expansions of life onto land. When you look at a frond, you are seeing a plant body with plumbing, structure, and reach. The elegance can make it seem soft, but the underlying architecture is serious. Ferns feel delicate in the hand, yet their anatomy tells a much larger story about conquest, adaptation, and botanical invention. A fern's leafy frond is usually the generation we notice. The form most people think of as the whole plant is only one phase in a larger cycle. That visible stage is the spore-producing generation, and it is the one built to dominate space, catch light, and hold its place in the world. It is the version with arching fronds, spreading crowns, and the strength to last through changing weather. This is the public life of a fern, the part that stands in woodland shade or spills from a garden pot. It is also the stage that carries the reproductive structures most observers eventually notice under the leaves. In a way, it is the large and expressive chapter of the life story. What makes that so intriguing is that the familiar plant is not the beginning and not the end. It is one actor in a sequence. The fern we admire is already part of a handoff, growing in plain sight, while quietly preparing for another, smaller world to take over next. The hidden fern generation is tiny, delicate, and easy to miss. If you searched for it with no guidance, you might walk straight past it 100 times. This stage lives close to the ground, often thin as a green film, and can be mistaken for almost anything except what it is. Yet this small structure is where one of the most intimate parts of the fern life cycle unfolds. It does not tower, branch, or spread dramatic fronds. Instead, it stays modest and exposed, relying on the right patch of moisture, shelter, and timing. There is something almost daring about that. The great leafy plant gives way to a form so vulnerable, it seems barely equipped for the world at all. And still, it works. In hidden corners of soil, rock, or bark, this overlooked generation plays its part and then disappears from notice again. That makes ferns feel like plants with a secret life, one large and visible, the other quiet enough to vanish into the background completely. Ferns need free water for one crucial moment of reproduction. This is one of the clearest signs that their life story reaches back into older chapters of land-plant history. At a key stage, fertilization depends on sperm that must actually swim through a film of water to reach the egg. Rain, dew, mist, or persistent damp can make that possible. Without that moisture, the process cannot be completed. It is a striking detail because it ties reproduction not just to season, but to immediate conditions in the surrounding world. A fern can stand rooted in place, looking complete and self-contained, yet still depend on a thin, temporary pathway of water to continue its line. That gives the whole cycle a sense of suspense. Somewhere out in the damp leaf litter or on a shaded rock surface, success may depend on a moisture window, so small most people would never think to notice it. Ferns are land plants, yes, but they still carry a watery memory inside their most vital moment. Many fern spores travel on wind far beyond sight. They are so small and light that once released, they can rise into currents no human eye can track. From there, the journey becomes a matter of air, turbulence, and chance. A spore may land a few feet away in the same patch of shade, or it may be carried far over ridges, rivers, clearings, or open water before coming down. That scale of movement helps explain how ferns appear in unexpected places. A new wall, a fresh road cut, a remote gorge, or an isolated island may all become possible destinations if conditions line up at the end of the flight. There is something thrilling about that invisible traffic overhead. Forests, mountains, and coastlines are connected by microscopic travelers drifting through air we think of as empty. Most will fail, of course. The odds are brutal. But the strategy is not about certainty. It is about reach, persistence, and the astonishing botanical gamble at becoming airborne and letting the sky decide. A single frond can carry thousands of future plants. Turn over the leaf of the right species, and you may be looking at a densely packed nursery of possibility. Those little clusters beneath the surface can contain immense numbers of spores, each one a potential starting point for another life cycle. The arithmetic becomes dizzying very quickly. One plant can produce frond after frond, and each fertile one may release a cloud so fine it passes unnoticed. That means a fern does not rely on a handful of precious offspring. It floods the odds. The environment may be harsh, suitable landing sites may be rare, and many spores may never amount to anything. Yet the numbers are part of the genius. The plant answers uncertainty with abundance. What seems like a single decorative leaf becomes something much more dramatic when you understand what it is carrying. Not just tissue and chlorophyll, but an entire airborne future in waiting, multiplied thousands of times over and packed beneath a surface most people never inspect. Some ferns spread more by underground rhizomes than spores. Not every expansion happens through the air. In many species, the real movement is happening below ground, where horizontal stems push slowly through soil, leaf litter, or crevices and send up new fronds at intervals. This can create the illusion of many separate plants when in fact they are joined as parts of one continuing body. It is a very different strategy from casting spores into the wind. Instead of gambling on distance, the plant consolidates territory, inch by inch, in the place it already knows it can survive. That makes some colonies feel patient and deliberate, almost like a slow negotiation with the landscape. The visible fronds are only the surface markers of that advance. Beneath them, the plant is probing, branching, and claiming ground in darkness. Once you know that, a fern patch stops looking static. It becomes a front line. Quiet, hidden, and steady, but always moving through the earth in its own measured way. Fern colonies can quietly creep outward for years underground. A patch that looks settled may actually be expanding all the time. Beneath the visible cluster of fronds, stems can extend through the soil and produce fresh growth farther out, so the colony slowly enlarges without any obvious dramatic event. One season may reveal only a slight widening. Another may fill a new strip of shade beside a rock, a log, or a path. Over years, the effect can be substantial. That slow march is easy to miss because it happens beneath leaf litter and darkness, with no sound and almost no sign until the next fronds appear. Yet it can reshape a corner of woodland or garden with great persistence. What makes this fascinating is the contrast between speed and result. Nothing about a fern suggests conquest in the usual sense. There is no rush, no burst, no showy takeover. Still, through patient underground advance, a colony can turn from a few scattered fronds into a broad, connected sweep of green. Fern rhizomes can store food and survive hard seasons. Hidden below the surface, these structures do more than spread. They also function as reserves, holding resources that can support the plant through cold, drought, damage, or periods when fronds die back. That buried storage changes the whole character of the fern. What seems soft and seasonal above ground may be anchored by a persistent body below, waiting for better conditions. In a woodland winter or a dry spell, the visible part may shrink, fade, or disappear. It can look as though the plant has failed, but underground, the rhizome may remain alive and provisioned, carrying enough stored energy to send up new growth when moisture, temperature, and light return to a favorable balance. There is something reassuring in their design. It is the botanical version of endurance through retreat. The fern does not need to win every moment on the surface. It can withdraw into a hidden reserve, hold on, and then reappear when the season opens again. Many ferns return after fire from protected underground parts. A blaze can erase the visible green in a matter of minutes, leaving slopes blackened and seemingly empty. Yet for some species, the story is not over at all. Because key tissues lie below the surface, insulated by soil and sheltered from the worst heat, they can survive what the fronds above cannot. When rain comes and conditions ease, new growth may begin to emerge from ground that still looks scorched. That recovery can feel almost uncanny. A burned landscape seems stripped to ash. Then suddenly small coils or fresh blades appear as if the earth itself has decided to reopen. Ferns are not all fire specialists, of course, but many are better prepared for disturbance than their delicate appearance suggests. The resilience comes not from resisting flames in place, but from surviving beneath them. In that way, a fire does not always end the fern. Sometimes it only clears the stage, and the plant begins again from the part the flames never truly reached. Some ferns are pioneers on raw lava and fresh landslides. When a volcano leaves behind bare rock or a slope collapses and strips the ground to fresh debris, the result can look utterly hostile to life. There is little shelter, little organic matter, and almost no sense of softness. Yet these are exactly the kinds of places where certain ferns can be among the early arrivals. Spores drift in, tiny bits of dust and moisture collect, and roots begin finding purchase in cracks and unstable grit. Their arrival matters because pioneer plants help start the slow conversion of damaged ground into habitat. They trap particles, contribute organic material, and soften extremes at the surface. Over time, this can make life possible for other organisms too. That gives ferns an unexpected role in planetary recovery. They are not just inhabitants of finished forests. Some are among the first green signatures of return after violence. On a cooling lava flow or a scarred slope, they can be part of the first sentence in a new ecological chapter. Other ferns thrive best in deep shade and dripping air. These are the specialists of dim ravines, wet gullies, cloud forests, and stream-cut places where sunlight arrives filtered and broken. In such habitats, moisture hangs in the air, surfaces stay damp, and evaporation is slowed by cover above. Many plants would struggle there for lack of direct light, yet certain ferns seem perfectly tuned to it. Their fronds spread into that softened brightness and make use of what little reaches them. The result can be astonishingly rich. Steep banks, rock walls, and forest floors become layered in greens of different heights and textures, all sustained by shade that might feel too dark for growth. That preference gives these plants an almost secretive quality. They reward people who look beyond open ground and bright flowers, and who step into the cool interior of a landscape instead. In those shadowed places, ferns often look most at home. Not subdued, but perfectly adapted, as though low light and wet air were always the world they were meant for. Epiphytic ferns live on trees without taking food from them. At first glance, it is easy to assume a plant growing on another plant must be a parasite. But these ferns are doing something very different. They use branches and trunks as places to live, not as bodies to drain. The tree is support, elevation, and access to light and moisture moving through the air. Water may collect in bark creases, and bits of organic matter may gather around roots or leaf bases, giving the fern enough to survive without tapping into the host for nourishment. That distinction is important because it reveals a whole aerial version of plant life. In rainforests and humid woods, the canopy is not just open space above the ground. It is habitat in its own right. Ferns occupy that upper world with great elegance, turning bark into a living platform. To look up and see them perched high overhead is to realize the forest is layered in more ways than most people notice, with entire botanical lives unfolding above eye level. Some epiphytic ferns build baskets that trap falling leaves. These plants do something ingenious with form. Their fronds are not all meant for the same job. In certain species, some are shaped and positioned to catch debris from above, including dead leaves, twigs, dust, and other organic material drifting down through the canopy. Over time, that trapped litter accumulates around the base of the plant and begins to break down. In effect, the fern creates its own pocket of nutrient-rich material while hanging off the ground. It is a remarkable adaptation because canopy life can be rich in light but poor in access to soil. Instead of waiting for ideal conditions, the plant engineers a substitute. It builds a suspended compost system in the trees. Rainwater passes through, decomposition begins, and the fern gains a local source of support in a place where roots cannot reach the forest floor. It is one of those adaptations that feels almost startlingly clever, a botanical solution to life in midair. Birds' nest ferns can hold whole miniature ecosystems overhead. Their broad fronds rise from a central rosette, creating a bowl-like structure that catches water, leaf litter, fallen seeds, and fragments of life from above. Over time, that center can become a moist pocket of decomposing material rich enough to support far more than the fern itself. Insects may shelter there. Small animals may forage there. Microbes and fungi get to work on the accumulating debris. In some cases, even other plants can begin life in the material gathered in that leafy basin. What seems from below like a single ornamental plant may actually be a suspended habitat, a little world held in the crook of the canopy. That is part of the wonder of forests. The architecture of one organism becomes living space for many others. Birds' nest ferns make that visible in a particularly dramatic way. They do not just occupy the trees. They create overhead pockets where water, decay, shelter, and life are all gathered together. Staghorn ferns grow fronds that look more like antlers than leaves. They are among the most arresting examples of how strange this plant group can become. Instead of the classic feathered shape many people associate with ferns, these species produce dramatic, branching fronds that fork and spread in ways strongly reminiscent of antlers. Mounted on trunks or displayed on walls, they can look almost animal in outline, which is part of why they are so memorable. Yet the shape is not merely decorative. Different fronds perform different tasks. Some extend outward for light and spore production, while others form shield-like bases that press against the surface beneath and help collect debris. The plant ends up looking sculptural, as though two design languages were fused into one organism. That visual strangeness matters because it breaks the idea that ferns are all variations on soft greenery. A staghorn can feel bold, architectural, and almost theatrical. It reminds you that once you step into fern diversity, familiar expectations disappear very quickly. Filmy fans have leaves so thin they seem almost unreal. Some species are built with tissue only a single cell layer thick across much of the blade, which means the leaf can look translucent when light passes through it. Instead of feeling sturdy and self-contained, it seems almost like living membrane, more whisper than structure. That fragility comes with a cost. These plants are tied to places that stay very wet, because such thin tissue loses water rapidly and cannot tolerate drying in the way tougher ferns can. So they often live in dripping grottos, spray zones, saturated ravines and cloud forests where the air itself helps keep them alive. To encounter one is to see how far plant design can go in the direction of delicacy. It can feel as though the fern has been reduced to the minimum needed for light capture and life. Yet it works beautifully in the right setting. Not every successful plant is armored. Some survive by becoming almost unbelievably fine. Some aquatic ferns float like green lace on still water. This is a very different image from woodland fronds and shaded rock faces. In ponds, rice fields, marshy backwaters, and other calm surfaces, certain species live directly on the water, forming mats or scattered drifts that seem almost too light to belong to the same plant lineage as kraal. Larger terrestrial ferns. Their structure is adapted for buoyancy and life at the surface, where light is abundant and movement is mostly determined by currents, breeze, and crowding. Seen from above, they can look like delicate embroidery spread across the water. Yet these floating communities can also be ecologically significant, shading the surface, interacting with nutrients, and changing conditions for other organisms beneath them. What makes them so captivating is the contrast. The same broader lineage that includes towering tree ferns and cliff dwellers also includes these tiny floating forms. It is a reminder that ferns are not locked to one style of life. They can even turn a still pond into their own drifting world. A zola is a fern small enough to carpet ponds. This tiny plant can multiply so effectively that a water surface may vanish beneath it, replaced by what looks like a continuous sheet of red or green. Because each plant is so small, the collective effect can be startling. A quiet pond becomes a living skin. In some conditions, the spread is fast enough to transform the appearance of a whole wetland corner in a short span of time. Yet the true fascination goes deeper. This fern lives in partnership with nitrogen-fixing cyanobacteria, which means it participates in a remarkable biological alliance. The microbes help supply usable nitrogen, and that has made a zola important in some agricultural systems, especially rice cultivation. It is a tiny floating plant with consequences that reach far beyond its size. There is something wonderful about that. A fern so small many people would barely notice an individual can still alter landscapes, support farming, and cover water in a way that feels almost magical when seen from shore. Giant ferns and tiny ferns both belong to the same lineage. That range is one of the best reasons to take the group seriously. Within this single broad branch of plant life, you can move from species that tower in wet tropical forests to species so small they seem hardly more than green punctuation on soil, bark, or water. The contrast is extraordinary. We often assume ancient lineages are narrow or uniform, as though age should make them conservative. Ferns prove the opposite. Over immense spans of time, they have diversified into forms that occupy radically different scales and settings. Some command space. Others nearly disappear into it. Some create the mood of a primeval forest. Others live out their whole existence in a place no larger than your palm. Yet all are linked through the same deep evolutionary heritage. That makes the group feel both coherent and wildly expansive at once. Once you realize this, the word fern stops meaning one familiar shape and starts meaning a whole universe of possibilities. Many fern fronds are divided again and again into lacework. Some fronds seem less like leaves and more like architecture made of green thread. A central stalk gives rise to leaflets. Those leaflets divide again, and then sometimes divide yet again, until the whole structure becomes a living pattern of ribs, windows, and shadows. This repeated branching is one reason ferns can look so intricate, even when they are doing something simple, which is spreading surface into the light. The result is both practical and beautiful. Air can move through the fine divisions, rain can pass, and light can be gathered across a wide area without making a heavy, solid blade. In woodland shade, that lacework catches light in a way that feels almost deliberate, as though the plant has been cut with exquisite care. It also gives many species their unmistakable elegance. You do not have to know the science to feel the effect. One glance is often enough to make a fern look crafted rather than merely grown. Some fronds are simple and whole, with almost no divisions. That can be surprising if your mental image of a fern is always feathery and deeply cut. Some species abandon that look almost entirely. Their leaves may be long and strap-like, broad and undivided, or shaped in bold, clean forms that make them seem more like tropical foliage plants than what people expect from this group. This matters because it breaks a common illusion. Ferns are not one shape repeated across the world. They are a spectrum, and some members of that spectrum are striking precisely because they are so restrained. A whole frond can look calm, solid, and almost modern in outline, yet it belongs to an ancient lineage with the same deep heritage as the lace-like forms. In wet forests, on trunks, or in cultivated spaces, these simpler shapes can have a dramatic presence. They remind you that fern beauty does not always come from complexity. Sometimes the fascination lies in the opposite. In a leaf so spare and self-assured, it barely needs ornament at all. Fern textures range from leathery toughness to paper-thin softness. Touch a few different species, and the variety becomes impossible to ignore. One may feel firm and resilient, built to resist drying, wind, or rough exposure. Another may seem so delicate that even a fingertip feels too heavy for it. This range tells you a great deal about where each kind belongs. Thick, leathery fronds often suit harsher conditions, where water may be less reliable or surfaces more exposed. Softer ones tend to belong to places where the air stays moist and the risk of drying is lower. In other words, texture is not just a pleasant detail. It is a clue to lifestyle, geography, and strategy. That makes fern surfaces more interesting than they first appear. A frond is not simply green tissue arranged in a shape. It is a record of the conditions it was built to survive. Once you notice that, you start to read texture the way you might read fur, feathers, or bark, as evidence of a hidden way of life. Some fern fronds shine with a metallic or bluish cast. Not every fern settles for ordinary green. In certain species, the surface catches light in a way that gives the frond a silvery, steely, or blue-tinged quality, as though the plant has borrowed a color palette from moonlight or polished metal. Sometimes the effect comes from waxes or surface structure. Sometimes it is tied to the way light reflects from the tissues themselves. Whatever the cause, the result can be startling. A patch of fronds may seem to glow colder than the foliage around it, standing apart from the deeper greens of the forest. That unusual sheen gives these plants a slightly unreal presence, especially in filtered light where every shift of angle changes the impression. It is one of those details that can make a person stop and look again. We think of ferns as subtle plants, and often they are. Yet some seem to flirt with another register entirely. Not loud in the way flowers are loud, but strange, cool, and quietly luminous. Young fronds uncurl in one of botany's most graceful movements. There is no sudden burst, no dramatic bloom, and no bright signal to announce the moment. Instead, the process unfolds with patience. A tightly coiled tip begins to loosen, then lengthens, then opens section by section as the frond expands into its mature form. Watching this happen can feel almost hypnotic because the movement seems choreographed rather than merely biological. It has direction, rhythm, and a sense of revelation. The hidden form is always there, packed inside the coil, waiting to be drawn outward into space. That is part of why people find the process so memorable. It is growth made visible in a way most plants do not offer so clearly. The young leaf does not simply appear. It unfurls, and in doing so, turns development into performance. In gardens, forests, and greenhouse benches, this slow opening can make a fern feel oddly theatrical. You are watching a plant become itself in front of you, one measured release at a time. The spiral of a fiddlehead follows ancient growth geometry. That curled form is not decorative whim. It emerges from a deeply efficient pattern in which the vulnerable tip stays tucked inward, while the rest of the leaf elongates behind it. The geometry packs a great deal into a compact space, protects the growing point, and allows the expanding frond to unroll in a controlled sequence. Nature returns to spirals again and again because they solve problems elegantly, and ferns offer one of the clearest examples. There is something almost mathematical about the coil, yet it never feels cold. It feels old, inevitable, and strangely satisfying to the eye. Perhaps that is why people respond to fiddleheads so strongly. They seem to carry order within them, as though the plant is following a design principle older than any forest path where you might meet it. When a frond loosens from that spiral, you are seeing geometry translated into living tissue, a shape that protects, organizes, and quietly reveals the intelligence built into plant growth. Some fern fronds can be taller than a person. Stand beside one of the great tropical or subtropical species, and the scale can be genuinely startling. What you thought of as a background plant suddenly becomes a structure large enough to cast real shade, frame a path, or arch above your head like a green roof. The size changes your emotional response as much as your visual one. Smaller ferns invite inspection. These larger ones can feel immersive. You do not simply look at them. You move among them. Their blades spread into space with a kind of authority that makes the surrounding landscape feel older and wetter, almost as though the air itself belongs to another climate. And because the leaf is still recognizably a fern frond, the effect is even stronger. Familiar pattern meets unfamiliar scale. A form you associate with delicate ground plants suddenly becomes monumental. That shift is one reason giant fronds are so memorable. They take something intimate and expand it until it begins to shape the whole atmosphere of a place. Others are smaller than a child's fingernail. At the opposite end of the scale are species so tiny that they can be missed even by careful eyes. A person may scan a wall, a damp bank, or a patch of soil and never realize a complete fern is living there in miniature. These small forms do not impress by mass or drama. They impress by precision. Everything the lineage does, from leaf making to reproduction, is condensed into a body so slight it can occupy spaces between grains, crumbs of moss, or the finest cracks in rock. That smallness has a powerful effect on how you think about the group. It means fern life is not only a story of lush ravines and large fronds. It is also a story of near invisibility, of survival on a scale where a few millimeters can be the difference between exposure and shelter. When you finally notice one, it can feel like discovering an entire forest reduced to a whisper, complete in structure, but almost impossibly small. Fern spores often gather in neat dots on the leaf undersides. To many people, the underside of a frond is where the plant suddenly becomes more interesting. What looked like a purely decorative leaf reveals rows or clusters of tiny marks, often brown, gold, blackish, or rust-colored depending on maturity and species. At first, they can seem like blemishes or insect damage. Then you realize they are part of the reproductive design, arranged with a tidiness that can feel almost printed onto the surface. This hidden pattern changes the whole experience of looking at a fern. The upper side offers shape and texture. The lower side offers a secret map. In that way, a fern rewards curiosity in a very direct sense. Turn the leaf over, and the plant becomes more complex than it first appeared. There is something quietly thrilling about that. The frond is not finished with beauty when seen from above. Its hidden face carries another layer of organization, another sign that these plants are built with more subtlety than casual observers often imagine. Those spore clusters are called sori, and they vary beautifully. Once you know to look for them, they become one of the most satisfying details in the fern world. In one species, they may appear as rounded dots, spaced like careful punctuation. In another, they run along the veins or gather near the margins in curved streaks. Their placement, color, and shape can be so distinctive that they become a kind of fingerprint. This is where fern beauty becomes wonderfully technical without losing its charm. The patterns are not there for us, of course, yet they often look composed enough to feel intentional. Under a hand lens, the undersides of fronds can become little galleries of arrangement and variation. A person who once saw only green leaves begins to notice designs, groupings, and recurring styles across species. That shift is important. It turns the fern from a general impression into a series of individuals, each with its own visual signature. The more closely you look, the more these reproductive patterns begin to feel like art hidden in plain sight. Some ferns hide their sori under protective flaps. In these species, the reproductive clusters are partly covered by tissue called an indusium, which can act like a small shield while the structures beneath develop. The detail is easy to miss unless you look carefully, but once seen, it gives the underside of the frond an entirely new level of complexity. Instead of exposed clusters, you find coverings that lift, split, or curl as maturity approaches. It is a subtle form of protection, and it suggests that even tiny reproductive bodies may need guarding from damage, drying, or disturbance at the wrong moment. There is something appealingly secretive about this arrangement. The plant has not only placed its future on the hidden side of the leaf, it has tucked that future under little flaps as well. It feels almost like a second layer of privacy. For the observer, that makes discovery more rewarding. You are not just finding sori. You are finding a concealed version of them, part hidden, part revealed, and all the more fascinating because of it. Others display their sori openly in tidy rows or lines. Not every species bothers with coverings. Some present their reproductive clusters directly on the underside, often arranged in striking patterns that track the form of the leaf itself. They may line the veins, follow the margins, or run in parallel bands that make the frond look marked with deliberate script. The openness has its own elegance. Nothing is tucked away. The structures are simply there, orderly and visible to anyone who thinks to turn the leaf over. This gives certain ferns a kind of graphic clarity. Their hidden side is not messy or accidental. It is organized with enough regularity to seem almost designed by rule. That visual order can be surprisingly memorable once you notice it. A person may begin to recognize species not by the outline seen from above, but by the pattern laid out beneath. In that sense, the open display becomes more than a reproductive choice. It becomes part of the plant's character, a way of writing identity on the underside of its own leaves. A fern can be identified by the pattern beneath its leaves. That idea alone makes them feel more intriguing. Many people expect identification to depend mainly on the obvious parts, the overall shape, the size, the color from above. With ferns, the underside often carries some of the most useful clues. The position of sori, the presence or absence of coverings, the way clusters align with veins or margins, and even the spacing between them can separate one species from another. This turns identification into a kind of careful reading. You are not simply admiring a plant. You are decoding it. That process can be surprisingly absorbing because the answer may lie in details invisible until the frond is lifted and examined closely. It gives fern study an intimacy that is easy to love. To know the plant, you must look where casual attention does not go. You must inspect the hidden face, and there is something wonderful in that. The fern keeps part of its identity out of plain sight, waiting for the observer willing to notice what lies underneath. Fern hairs and scales can be as diagnostic as flowers. In many plant groups, flowers do much of the work of recognition. Ferns often ask you to look elsewhere. Along the stalks, rachis, and leaf surfaces, there may be hairs, bristles, or tiny scales whose color, density, shape, and placement help distinguish one species from another. These structures can look insignificant at first, but to a careful eye, they are rich with information. A pale scale with a dark center, a fringe of hairs along a margin, a glossy stalk with almost none at all, each can point in a different direction. This is part of what makes fern observation feel so immersive. It trains attention on small, tactile things rather than bright, obvious signals. And the reward is that the plant begins to resolve into personality. The details are minute, but they are not trivial. They are the clues by which the fern declares itself. A person who notices them moves from seeing greenery in general to seeing a particular individual with a particular design. Some ferns feel fuzzy because fine scales coat the frond. That softness can be unexpectedly important. What seems like a pleasant texture may actually be part of how the plant manages water, light, and exposure. Tiny scales or hairs can help reduce moisture loss, reflect excess light, or provide a measure of defense against abrasion and small grazers. They also change the visual character of the frond. Instead of a flat green surface, you get something muted, velvety, or softly silvered, with light catching in a gentler way. The plant begins to seem almost furred. In dry or exposed habitats, that coating can make all the difference between stress and survival. In shaded places, it can still give the species a distinct personality, one more tactile than graphic. People often remember these ferns because the hand confirms what the eye already suspects. This is not a smooth leaf. It has surface, warmth, and texture. The result is a fern that feels less like polished foliage and more like something woven or clothed. Others are smooth and glossy, like polished green leather. Here the effect is completely different. The frond catches light in broad, clean reflections, and the surface can look almost varnished after rain. That polish gives certain species a bold presence, especially in deep shade where glossy surfaces stand out against duller foliage around them. The leaves seem less feathery and more sculpted, with a firmness that suggests endurance and poise. In some cases, the texture also reflects adaptation because thicker, smoother surfaces can help with water balance and durability. But even before you think about function, the aesthetic effect is powerful. A glossy fern can look refined, deliberate, and almost luxurious. It reminds you that fern beauty is not limited to softness or intricacy. Some species impress by simplicity, sheen, and composure. In the right light, a cluster of such fronds can appear almost too perfect to be wild, as though each leaf has been burnished by hand. That contrast keeps the group endlessly interesting from one species to the next. A fern frond can keep growing from the tip. Unlike many leaves, which reach a certain point and are essentially finished in shape, some fern fronds continue extending from the apex as development proceeds. That gives them a different rhythm of growth, one that feels more like a journey than a sudden reveal. The tip remains active, adding length and opening new sections over time, so the leaf can seem to advance forward into space. In climbing or scrambling species, this can be especially dramatic. The frond is not just expanding, it is reaching. That quality changes how the plant occupies its surroundings. Instead of sitting passively where it first opened, the frond can continue negotiating light, support, and available space as it develops. There is something almost exploratory about it. A fern leaf becomes a moving front of growth rather than a fixed panel. Once you understand that, certain fronds stop looking static. They begin to look like living lines in progress, still writing themselves into the air from the very tip onward. In some species, fronds arch outward like fountains. This growth form gives a plant immediate atmosphere. The fronds rise from the center, then curve outward and down in a sweep that feels both balanced and abundant. The overall effect is not flat but flowing, as if the plant were pouring green from its own crown. In gardens, forests, or pots, that shape creates a sense of motion even when the air is still. It also changes the way space is used. Instead of presenting one face to the world, the plant spreads in all directions, softening edges and filling volume. That is one reason arching species feel so generous. They do not simply occupy a patch of ground. They create a presence around themselves. Light filters through them differently, shadows gather beneath them differently, and nearby surfaces seem to gain softness by association. It is one of the most graceful forms in the plant world. A good fountain-shaped fern does not just grow. It seems to unfurl into the room or landscape with confidence and ease. In others, fronds rise stiffly like green feathers. These species create a completely different impression. Instead of spilling outward, the leaves stand more upright, often in tight ranks or clear vertical lines. The result can feel precise, formal, even slightly architectural. A clump of such fronds may resemble a fan of plumes or a gathering of spears softened into green. This upright posture changes the personality of the plant. It becomes less about flow and more about structure. In shaded ground or rocky places, that can be extremely effective. The plant catches the eye through poise rather than sweep, and the repeated verticals can make even a small colony look ordered and intentional. There is also something faintly avian about the silhouette, which may be why feather comparisons come so naturally. Yet unlike actual feathers, these are durable, rooted, and alive with slow growth. The effect is elegant in a different register, not soft abundance but held form, a fern becoming almost columnar without losing its essential delicacy. Fern forms can look feathery, antlered, laddered, or hand-shaped. By this point, the simplest truth may be that there is no single fern look. Some species divide into fine plumes that seem airy enough to dissolve into shadow. Some branch like antlers and feel almost sculptural. Others arrange their segments along a central axis with the regularity of rungs, while others spread into shapes that suggest fingers or an open palm. This range is not a side note. It is one of the central reasons the group stays so compelling. The deeper you go, the more the category keeps slipping away from any neat mental picture. Ferns are not one design repeated across climates and centuries. They are a whole gallery of forms built on shared ancestry and endless variation. That is what makes them so rewarding to follow. Every time you think you have grasped the essence of a fern, another shape appears and broadens the definition again. The result is not confusion, but wonder. A single lineage has learned how to look astonishingly different from itself. Ferns do not make seeds, yet they conquered the land early. It is easy to assume that seeds were always the winning invention, and in many ways they were. But before seeds came to dominate so much of the modern landscape, spore-bearing plants had already found powerful ways to spread across the continents. Ferns belong to that older strategy. They relied on lightweight spores, vascular tissues, and flexible life cycles to occupy damp ground, shaded slopes, river margins, and expanding forests. They did not need flowers, cones, or fruit to become successful. They needed timing, moisture, and enough persistence to make the most of a world that was still becoming green. That is part of what makes them so impressive. They were among the early masters of terrestrial plant life without using the reproductive system we now think of as standard. In a sense, they helped prove that large, complex, land-dwelling plants were possible before seed plants rose to full prominence. They represent an older botanical solution, and it worked astonishingly well. Their ancestors were part of Earth's first great green worlds. Imagine the planet before familiar forests of oak, pine, or flowering trees. The continents were being transformed by earlier vegetation, and among the lineages contributing to that greening were ancient relatives of modern ferns. These were members of a wider spore-bearing world that helped build the first truly expansive plant-covered landscapes on land. That change was not just visual. As vegetation spread, it altered soils, slowed erosion, influenced water cycles, and changed the chemistry of the atmosphere itself. In other words, these early green worlds did not simply decorate the planet. They helped remake it. That is the scale at which fern ancestry becomes thrilling. A frond by a stream is linked, through deep evolutionary history, to one of the most important shifts Earth ever experienced, the transformation of bare land into living terrain. Once you see that connection, a fern stops seeming like a humble shade plant. It becomes a surviving thread from the great botanical revolution that helped reshape the planet's surface. Ancient fern relatives helped shape coal-forming swamp ecosystems. In the deep past, vast wetlands spread across parts of the world, filled with towering vegetation, saturated ground, and thick, humid air. Among the dominant plants in these ecosystems were ancient relatives of today's ferns, along with other spore-bearing groups that no longer exist in the same form. These swamps were not just biologically rich. They were geologically consequential. Plant matter accumulated in waterlogged conditions where complete decay was slowed, and over immense spans of time that buried material was compressed and transformed into coal. So when people speak about coal, they are also speaking, in part, about the remains of vanished green worlds. That link gives fern history a startling reach into human life. Entire industrial eras were powered by sunlight stored by ancient swamp vegetation hundreds of millions of years earlier. The lineage standing quietly in today's woodland shade is connected to ecosystems that left fuel beds in the earth. Fern history is not only botanical, it helped write part of civilization's energy story. Today's fern diversity is old in origin, yet surprisingly modern in spread. That combination is one of the most intriguing things about them. On one hand, the group has deep evolutionary roots that reach far back into the history of land plants. On the other hand, many of the ferns we know today belong to lineages that spread and diversified strongly in worlds that already looked more recognizably modern. They are ancient, yes, but not frozen relics. They continued adapting, radiating, and finding new opportunities long after earlier plant communities had changed. This makes them feel less like leftovers from a vanished age and more like active participants in Earth's ongoing ecological story. Their origins are old enough to be awe-inspiring, yet their success carried forward into landscapes shared with flowering plants, modern forests, and shifting climates. That mix of old ancestry and later reinvention gives the group unusual energy. Ferns are not simply survivors that endured. They are survivors that kept evolving, which is one reason they remain so widespread, varied, and alive in the present. Some fern groups vanished long ago, leaving only fossils behind. The fern story is not one smooth line from past to present. It is full of branches, and some of those branches ended. Entire groups that once contributed to ancient landscapes are now known only from impressions in rock, compressed plant remains, or mineralized fragments preserved across geological time. Their shapes can be reconstructed, their habitats inferred, and their place in the broader history of plant evolution considered, but the living organisms themselves are gone. That gives fossil fern relatives a certain poignancy. They remind us that survival was never guaranteed, even for lineages that once seemed established. The world changed, climates shifted, competitors rose, and some forms simply did not make the crossing into the present. When paleobotanists study these lost groups, they are not just naming extinct plants. They are recovering parts of a vanished green world. Every fossilized frond or stem becomes a message from a botanical branch that once lived fully and then disappeared, leaving only stone to carry its memory forward. Others passed through mass extinctions and still survive today. That is where fern history begins to feel almost defiant. Across geological time, Earth has endured catastrophic episodes that transformed life on a global scale. Oceans changed, climates lurched, ecosystems collapsed, and countless lineages disappeared forever. Yet some fern lineages made it through. Not unchanged, certainly, but alive. They passed through crises that erased many of their contemporaries and continued onward into new worlds. There is something deeply compelling about that kind of endurance. A modern fern is not merely old by age of ancestry. It belongs to a group tested repeatedly by upheaval. That gives the frond a hidden drama. Its lineage has endured planetary stress on a scale beyond human imagination. The calm appearance of the plant can conceal that epic resilience. To stand before one today is to stand before the descendant of survivors, a green continuation of life that kept going when worlds were breaking apart. Few ordinary garden or woodland plants carry that kind of deep historical toughness so quietly. Ferns often surged after ecological disasters opened the landscape. When catastrophe strips vegetation away, the first chapters of recovery do not always belong to large trees or slow-growing dominants. Very often, the early advantage goes to organisms that can disperse quickly, arrive in numbers, and tolerate disturbed ground. Ferns are especially good at this. Their spores can travel widely, their life cycles can exploit newly opened space, and some species are well suited to the unstable conditions left after fire, ashfall, flooding, or other forms of disruption. That means a devastated landscape may not stay barren for long. Ferns can be among the first signs that life is reclaiming it. In that sense, they are plants of return. They do not just endure in established forests. They can appear when those forests are broken, stepping into the vacancy before slower competitors regain control. There is something powerful in that role. Ferns become not merely survivors of disaster, but active agents in recovery, arriving early to begin the long work of turning damage back into green. Paleobotanists sometimes find moments in rock called fern spikes. This phrase refers to layers in the geological record where fern spores suddenly become far more abundant than usual. That surge matters because it can mark a dramatic ecological moment, a time when the landscape was disturbed so severely that ferns briefly gained a major advantage in the aftermath. Instead of trees and complex forests dominating the pollen and spore record, you see a flush of fern evidence rising from the sediments like a signal flare from deep time. It is one of the more elegant ideas in paleobotany that disaster can leave a green fingerprint. These spikes are not just about fern success. They are clues to wider collapse and recovery. A thin band of rock can preserve the memory of devastation, followed by the swift return of spore-bearing plants ready to occupy the open ground. Few things make the fern story feel more dramatic than this. In stone, across millions of years, they can appear as the first wave of life after ecological shock. Those fern spikes can signal rapid recovery after devastation. The beauty of the idea is that it transforms a patch of spores in rock into a story of resilience. After an event that strips ecosystems back, whether volcanic, climatic, or impact-related, the fossil record may show a sudden abundance of fern spores. That does not mean the world healed instantly. It means the earliest stage of healing had begun. Ferns were among the quick returners, the first green cover in places where larger vegetation had been removed. Their appearance can suggest bare ground becoming occupied, ash or sediment being softened by living growth, and the first rebuilding of ecological structure after collapse. In other words, a fern spike is not merely evidence of abundance. It is evidence of momentum in the direction of life. That is why it feels so moving, even in scientific terms. Deep in the rock record, these plants can represent the first answer to ruin. Not the final forest, not the full recovery, but the first real step back toward living landscapes. Ferns have a deep history of returning when worlds reset. Taken together, their fossil record, reproductive strategy, and ecological behavior all point toward a remarkable pattern. Again and again, when disturbance clears space on a large scale, these plants are well positioned to return. They arrive through spores, exploit exposed ground, and begin building green cover in places where prior communities have been broken apart. That role stretches from modern burned slopes and landslides to ancient crises recorded in stone. It gives ferns a kind of historical identity. They are not only plants of shade and stillness, they are also plants of restart. That contrast is part of their power. The same frond that seems calm beside a stream belongs to a lineage associated with renewal after upheaval. It is as though ferns carry a memory of damaged worlds and know how to answer them. That may be one reason they feel so evocative. Their story is not simply one of persistence through time. It is one of reappearance, recovery, and the repeated greening of emptied ground. Some ferns can tolerate astonishingly dry conditions for a while. This surprises people because the group is so often associated with damp forests and shaded ravines. Yet not all ferns are creatures of constant moisture. Some species can endure periods of serious drying by slowing their activity, reducing water loss, and waiting out conditions that would seem hostile to such delicate-looking plants. They may curl, stiffen, or appear lifeless for a time, but the tissues remain poised for recovery when moisture returns. This ability does not make them desert cacti, of course, yet it does reveal a toughness hidden beneath the frond's refined appearance. A plant that looks at home in mist can sometimes persist through real hardship. That reversal is one reason ferns stay fascinating. They keep undermining the assumptions people make about them. Soft does not always mean fragile. Green does not always mean constantly wet. In exposed rocky habitats or seasonally dry environments, some ferns prove that an ancient lineage can be more resilient, more strategic, and more patient than it first appears. Resurrection ferns can shrivel in drought, then green again after rain. Few plant tricks feel more dramatic than this one. During prolonged dryness, the fronds can curl, fade, and take on the look of something already lost. To an untrained eye, the plant may seem entirely dead, no longer part of the living landscape at all. Then rain arrives, or humidity rises enough, and the transformation begins. Water returns to the tissues, the fronds uncurl, color deepens, and the plant resumes life with startling speed. The effect can feel almost theatrical, as though time has been reversed. This is not magic. but a remarkable physiological strategy that allows survival through desiccation that would ruin less prepared species. It changes how you think about botanical life. Dormancy is one thing. Apparent death followed by visible return is something else entirely. The plant becomes a lesson in suspended vitality. It waits through inhospitable conditions, then re-enters the world as green as before, making drought look less like an ending than a pause. A few ferns thrive on serpentine soils rich in harsh minerals. Serpentine terrain is a difficult place for most plants. These soils often contain unusual chemistry, with high levels of certain metals and a nutrient balance that can be deeply challenging for ordinary vegetation. Growth there can be sparse, stunted, or highly specialized. Yet some ferns have found ways to cope. They occupy niches where many competitors struggle, turning inhospitable ground into viable habitat. That ability is fascinating because it shows just how chemically selective plant life can be. The earth beneath our feet is not all the same, and some species are tuned to conditions that would stress or poison others. For ferns, this expands the story far beyond damp woodland romance. Here, they become specialists of difficult geology, living where the chemistry itself acts like a filter. On serpentine slopes, a fern is not simply surviving in a pretty landscape. It is negotiating metals, nutrient imbalance, and stress, and winning just enough to make a living where most plants would rather not be. Some species prefer limestone, while others avoid it completely. Beneath a fern's elegance lies a surprisingly exact relationship with rock chemistry. Limestone creates alkaline conditions, affects drainage, and influences the minerals available to roots. For some ferns, that is ideal. They cling to calcareous cliffs, grow from mortar and old walls, or flourish in crevices where limestone governs the local environment. For others, the same conditions are a barrier. They are adapted instead to more acidic substrates and simply do not perform well where lime is abundant. This means geology can shape fern communities in ways most casual observers never notice. A wall, ravine, or hillside may seem green in a general sense, but the kind of rock underneath quietly decides who can live there. That hidden relationship gives ferns a kind of geological intimacy. They are reading the stone as much as the light. Once you know that, a fern growing from a ruin or cliff face becomes more than a picturesque detail. It becomes evidence of a deep conversation between plant and rock. Fern roots can help grip unstable slopes after disturbance. After a landslide, erosion event, or other disruption, loose ground can remain vulnerable for a long time. Rain can keep stripping soil away, and small collapses can continue before the surface stabilizes. In such places, plants that can quickly establish a hold become especially important. Ferns often play a part because their roots and underground stems help bind the upper layers of soil, litter, and debris together. They are not engineering miracles on their own, but they can contribute meaningfully to the first stages of slope recovery. That role gives them a practical kind of heroism. They are not merely returning because conditions suit them. Their return can help make the ground more livable for whatever comes next. A fragile hillside starts to hold. Particles stay put. Moisture is retained a little better. Over time, that matters. The fern becomes part of the process by which raw disturbance begins turning back into stable habitat, one rooted patch at a time. In forests, ferns can slow rain hitting the soil. A heavy shower falling straight onto bare ground can be surprisingly destructive. It breaks apart soil structure, splashes particles loose, and encourages runoff that carries fertility away downhill. Ferns help interrupt that force. Their fronds catch rainfall, soften its descent, and spread dripping water over time, instead of allowing every drop to strike directly with full impact. In dense patches, this creates a sort of living buffer between cloud and earth. The effect may seem modest, yet across a forest floor, it can be significant. Soil remains more protected, splash erosion is reduced, and the ground beneath stays more stable through repeated storms. This is one of those ecological services that often goes unnoticed because it is so quiet. Nothing dramatic happens. The forest simply holds together a little better because a layer of fronds is in place. That gives ferns a hidden role in maintaining the texture of woodland ground, not just as plants growing on the surface, but as moderators of the rain itself. Their fronds can shelter insects, frogs, and tiny forest life. A fern patch is rarely just a fern patch. Between the stems, beneath the arching fronds, and in the cool, damp air around them, there is often a small world of animals using the cover. Insects rest there, hunt there, and hide from predators there. Tiny frogs may use the moisture and concealment as protection during vulnerable parts of their lives. Spiders build among the stems. Small invertebrates move through the litter caught below. What seems from a distance like a simple mass of greenery can become, at close range, a layered shelter system. That is one reason dense fern growth feels so alive, even when nothing obvious is moving. The structure of the plant creates microhabitats, and other organisms move in. This makes the fern important not just as an individual species, but as architecture in the forest. It changes the local climate near the ground and offers room for lives much smaller than our own to unfold in safety. Fern thickets can shape where seedlings succeed beneath trees. Not every patch of forest floor offers the same chance to a young tree. Light is uneven, moisture shifts, and the vegetation already present can either protect or hinder a seedling trying to establish itself. Fern thickets play an important role in that balance. In some cases, they help by softening rain, reducing temperature extremes near the ground, and creating a more buffered environment. In other cases, they compete for light and space so effectively that tree seedlings struggle to get started. This means ferns can influence how forests regenerate, not just by existing within them, but by shaping the opportunities available to the next generation of woody plants. That ecological leverage is fascinating because it makes the fern more than background greenery. It becomes part of the decision-making environment of the forest, even without intention. A dense stand of fronds may quietly determine which young plants live, which fail, and how the future canopy begins to assemble above them. Some animals use fern cover as nurseries and hiding places. For a small creature, open ground can be dangerous. Exposure means heat, dryness, and visibility to predators. Fern cover changes that instantly. A low arch of fronds creates shade, humidity, and concealment close to the ground, which can make it a valuable nursery zone for eggs, young animals, or species that need protection while resting or hunting. Small reptiles may slip beneath it. Amphibians may use it to avoid drying out. Nesting or roosting behavior in some places can also be shaped by the cover and privacy these plants provide. What is striking is how much safety a fern can generate simply through form. It does not need thorns, toxins, or massive size to matter. It needs structure. And for animals living at a small scale, that structure can mean survival. Once you think about it that way, a fern patch begins to look less like scenery and more like shelter infrastructure, a green refuge where vulnerable lives can be hidden long enough to grow. Fern litter helps feed the quiet chemistry of the forest floor. When fronds age, collapse, and join the layer of debris beneath the plants, they do not stop mattering. Their remains enter the slow chemical economy of the forest, where fungi, microbes, moisture, and time begin the work of breakdown. Nutrients are released, organic matter builds, soil structure changes, and the ground becomes a little richer and more complex, because yesterday's fronds are being transformed into tomorrow's substrate. This is not flashy science, but it is essential. Forests run on these quiet exchanges. Every fallen piece of plant tissue becomes part of the larger cycle of decay and renewal. Fern litter contributes its share to that ongoing work. In damp woodland conditions, the process can be especially intimate, with decomposition happening beneath the same living fronds that will benefit from the altered soil above the old remains. That closed loop gives the fern a satisfying completeness. It grows from the forest floor, shapes it while alive, and then continues shaping it after falling back into it. Humans have admired ferns so much, it sparked fern fever. There are not many plant groups that have inspired something close to obsession, yet ferns managed it. People did not merely notice them and move on. They collected them, studied them, drew them, pressed them, displayed them, and spoke of them with the kind of fascination usually reserved for rare animals or distant ruins. Part of the appeal was visual. Their shapes felt elegant without being obvious, ancient without seeming dead, and wild without needing flowers to attract attention. But there was more to it than beauty. Ferns carried mystery. They reproduced in ways most people did not understand, appeared in cool, hidden places, and seemed to belong to an older world. That combination made them irresistible. Once people began looking closely, admiration became appetite. A walk in the countryside turned into a search. A plant by a wall became a treasure. Ferns were not just liked. They were pursued with genuine passion, which says a great deal about their strange pull on the human imagination. Victorian Britain once fell passionately in love with fern collecting. During the 19th century, Britain developed a remarkable enthusiasm for these plants, and what began as botanical interest soon became a social craze. Country walks turned into fern hunts. Railway journeys made remote habitats easier to reach, which meant enthusiasts could travel farther in search of unusual species. People scrambled over rocks, explored ravines, and searched damp cliffs with an intensity that sounds almost competitive today. Collecting was not limited to professional botanists. Amateurs, families, and hobbyists joined in, often learning names, habits, and habitats with impressive seriousness. A rare specimen could become the prize of a local expedition. Ferns entered homes, gardens, albums, and conversation. They became part science, part fashion, part adventure. That is what makes the period so fascinating. A nation known for industry and empire became, for a time, captivated by shaded gullies and curled green leaves. Ferns turned into objects of quest, and collecting them became a way of combining curiosity, status, and romance with the living countryside. That craze was called pteridomania, and it changed gardens and design. The word itself is unforgettable. Pteridomania means fern madness, and it captures just how far the enthusiasm spread. This was not a narrow botanical fad tucked away in specialist circles. It influenced how people imagined beauty indoors and outdoors. Garden makers began designing spaces that suited ferns, with shaded rockeries, humid corners, and sheltered arrangements built to show off their forms. Public parks and private estates embraced them. Indoor cultivation expanded as well, which encouraged new types of display furniture and glass plant cases. The craze also changed taste more broadly. Ferns became symbols of refinement, nature, and cultivated curiosity. Their outlines suggested delicacy and depth without gaudiness, which made them perfect for the sensibilities of the time. That is why pteridomania matters. It proves that ferns were not simply collected as scientific specimens. They actively reshaped the way people decorated, gardened, and thought about the relationship between domestic life and the natural world beyond the door. Fern motifs spread onto wallpaper, pottery, ironwork, and jewelry. Once the fern craze took hold, the plant escaped the garden and entered design. Its curling forms and divided fronds translated beautifully into decorative patterns, and before long those shapes appeared almost everywhere. Wallpaper carried repeating fern silhouettes across walls. Pottery was pressed or painted with fronds. Ironwork borrowed the curves and branching lines for gates, railings, and household objects. Jewelry adopted fern motifs that made the plant seem delicate, refined, and fashionable all at once. This spread reveals something important about human taste. Ferns offered a way to bring nature indoors without relying on bright flowers or loud colors. Their forms felt controlled, intricate, and elegant. They were wild, but not messy, ancient, but not severe. That made them ideal for ornament. A person could admire the plant in a ravine, then return home and find its image in the drawing room. The fern became more than a living organism. It became a visual language for style, taste, and cultivated wonder. People once built special glass cases just to grow ferns indoors. Before modern climate control, growing moisture-loving plants inside the home could be difficult. Domestic air was often smoky, dry, and unstable, which made life hard for many woodland species. The solution was ingenious. People began using glass enclosures, often known as Wardian cases, to create protected miniature environments where humidity stayed higher and conditions remained more stable. Inside these enclosed worlds, ferns could thrive in a way they rarely would on an ordinary windowsill. The cases also turned plant keeping into a form of theatre. A carefully arranged interior of moss, rocks, and fronds became a living scene under glass, part scientific curiosity and part decorative display. To own such a case was to bring a controlled fragment of the damp outdoors into the home. There is something wonderfully revealing in that effort. Fern admiration did not stop at collecting or illustration. People were willing to redesign the domestic environment itself, just to keep these ancient plants comfortably alive indoors. Those cases helped inspire the modern terrarium. What people now think of as a terrarium has roots in those earlier glass plant cases. The principle is the same, and still feels a little magical. Create an enclosed space, place plants and substrate inside, and the system begins to cycle moisture on its own. Water evaporates, condenses, and returns. Humidity remains elevated, and certain plants thrive in the resulting stability. Ferns were perfect for demonstrating the beauty of this idea because they look especially at home in miniature humid worlds. Their fronds soften the edges of stones and make even a small container feel lush. This historical link matters because it shows that the terrarium is not merely a modern trend. It descends from a genuine botanical solution to cultivation, one shaped in part by human desire to keep fern-rich micro-landscapes close at hand. Every glass garden today carries a trace of that older fascination. The terrarium is, in some ways, a small descendant of the era when people built worlds under glass for ferns. Ferns remain beloved houseplants because they soften rooms so easily. A fern changes a space in a way few plants can. It does not rely on dramatic flowers, bold color, or hard geometric lines. Instead, it introduces movement, texture, and a kind of visual gentleness that makes a room feel more inhabited and less rigid. Fronds blur edges. They spill, arch, and feather through the air. They make furniture seem less severe, and corners feel less empty. That is part of why people keep returning to them indoors. A single plant can make a shelf, table, or hanging pot feel more alive. There is also something timeless about their presence. They seem at once old-fashioned and completely current, equally at home in a Victorian parlor and a modern apartment. But their appeal is not only aesthetic. They invite attention without shouting for it. A room with a fern becomes calmer, greener, and more layered. These plants do not dominate interiors. They alter their mood, which may be why people keep falling for them again and again. Yet many wild ferns are far harder to please. This is where the romance of fern growing meets reality. A species that looks serene in a ravine may depend on a combination of shade, moisture, airflow, substrate chemistry, and seasonal rhythm that is difficult to recreate elsewhere. Some need constant humidity without stagnant air. Some want cool roots and moving water nearby. Others are tied to very specific rock types or woodland conditions that cannot be copied with a pot and good intentions. That is why certain wild species resist cultivation so stubbornly. They are not being difficult in any human sense. They are simply adapted to precise circumstances. This precision makes them more interesting, not less. It means each fern is not just a decorative form, but a habitat specialist carrying the signature of a real place. To fail with one in cultivation is often to discover how exact its needs truly are. The lesson is humbling. Ferns may look adaptable, but many belong to worlds so specific that home cannot easily imitate them. Some ferns are edible, but correct identification truly matters. This is one of those facts that sounds charming at first and serious almost immediately after. Yes, certain species have long been eaten by people, especially when young and carefully prepared. But the fern world is not a buffet where anything curled and green is fair game. Different species contain different compounds, and confusion can be risky. That makes identification essential, not optional. What fascinates me here is the contrast between familiarity and uncertainty. A spring woodland may be full of emerging coils, all beautiful, all suggestive of food to the untrained eye, yet only some belong in the kitchen. This turns edible ferns into a subject of cultural knowledge as much as botany. People who use them safely are not guessing. They are drawing on tradition, local understanding, and careful recognition. The plant becomes a test of attention. Beauty alone is not enough. To eat it responsibly, you must know what it is. And in the fern world, that knowledge truly matters. Fiddleheads are eaten in some regions during a brief spring window. For a short time each year, before certain fronds fully unfurl, the young coiled shoots of particular species are gathered as seasonal food. This timing matters because the stage is fleeting. Wait too long and the coils open, toughen, and become unsuitable. Arrive at the right moment, however, and you find one of spring's more unusual harvests. A plant food, shaped like a spiral and tied to ancient botanical growth patterns. In places where this tradition is well established, the season can carry real anticipation. The fiddleheads are not just ingredients. They are signals that the year is turning and that fresh green abundance is beginning to return. That gives them a cultural life beyond their taste. They become part of local rhythm and memory. I love that connection between ancient plant form and seasonal human practice. The same curled geometry that protects a young frond in the forest can also mark a brief culinary season, one that appears, peaks, and vanishes very quickly. Not every fiddlehead is safe, which makes fern foraging risky. This is where excitement has to yield to caution. To an inexperienced forager, many young fern shoots can look temptingly similar. They are curled, fresh, and seasonal, and that superficial resemblance creates danger. Some species are unsuitable to eat. Others raise concerns because of compounds they contain, or because preparation and species choice matter so much. The risk comes not from the idea of fern eating itself, but from confidence without knowledge. That makes fern foraging a poor place for guessing. It is not like picking an obvious apple from a tree. It demands precision, regional understanding, and respect for the fact that beauty and edibility do not always travel together. In a strange way, this makes the subject even more compelling. The fiddlehead looks simple, even innocent, yet it sits at the intersection of botany, culture, chemistry, and caution. The lesson is clear and worth remembering. A curled green shoot is not a meal until you truly know whose shoot it is. Some ferns contain chemicals that can harm grazing animals. Not all ferns are passive greenery waiting to be eaten. Some carry compounds that can make them problematic or dangerous for livestock when consumed in sufficient quantity. This matters especially where animals graze on rough ground or where desirable forage is scarce. What seems like harmless vegetation in a field edge or woodland margin can become part of a genuine management concern. The chemistry behind this is a reminder that plants are active participants in ecological conflict. They are not simply there to be consumed. Many defend themselves with compounds that reduce palatability, interfere with digestion, or cause harm. Ferns are part of that larger botanical reality. I find this fascinating because it pushes back against their gentle reputation. A frond may look soft and harmless, yet inside it may carry a chemical strategy shaped by long evolutionary pressure. That hidden edge gives the group more depth. Ferns are not only ancient and elegant. Some of them are chemically armed in ways grazing animals must avoid. Others have long histories in traditional medicine. Across different cultures, certain ferns have been gathered, prepared, and used for healing purposes, often in ways tied closely to local knowledge and inherited practice. This does not mean every traditional use has been validated by modern research, nor does it mean every medicinal fern is safe without expertise. What it does show is that people have paid close attention to these plants for a very long time, not just as ornament or curiosity, but as potential allies in health. That changes the emotional register of the fern. It becomes more than a woodland presence. It becomes part of human care, belief, and experimentation across generations. The frond by the stream is suddenly connected to kitchens, remedies, field knowledge, and memory. There is something deeply human in that continuity. A plant studied today in a laboratory may once have been known through hands, habit, and trust. Ferns have lived not only in ecosystems, but also in traditions, which makes their story both botanical and cultural at once. Fern fiber and trunks have also been used in horticulture. In some parts of the world, the fibrous material of certain tree ferns has been valued because it holds moisture, drains well, and provides a useful structure for growing other plants. Orchid cultivation in particular became closely associated with tree fern fiber for many years, since epiphytic plants often appreciated the airy, damp support it could provide. This is a fascinating twist in the fern story. One fern ends up becoming the growing medium for another type of treasured plant. Yet there is a shadow to that usefulness, because harvesting natural tree fern material can place pressure on slow-growing species and fragile habitats. So the tale is both practical and cautionary. It shows how deeply people have integrated ferns into horticultural craft, while also reminding us that botanical enthusiasm can carry ecological costs. The material itself was admired because it worked so well. That success reveals the remarkable physical qualities of tree fern structure and the conservation questions it eventually raised. In gardens, ferns can create lushness without flashy blooms. That may be one of their greatest gifts. A garden does not need bright petals to feel rich, layered, and deeply alive. Ferns prove that texture, form, and repetition can generate beauty all on their own. A bed filled with them can look abundant because of contrast between broad and fine fronds, upright and arching habits, matte and glossy surfaces. The eye moves through the planting differently. Instead of darting from flower to flower, it settles into shape and rhythm. This creates a more immersive kind of richness, one built from green itself. It is a subtler pleasure, but often a deeper one. Ferns make a place feel established, cool and full, even when almost nothing is in bloom. That power is why gardeners return to them so often when they want atmosphere rather than spectacle. A fern border does not shout. It envelops. It turns a patch of shade into something layered and inviting, and it does so without asking a single flower for help. Shade gardening would feel far poorer without them. There are many beautiful shade plants, but few are as essential to the mood of a shaded garden as ferns. They bridge spaces between hostas, woodland flowers, mosses, stones, and trunks with an ease that feels almost inevitable. Without them, shady areas can become heavy, flat, or overly static. Ferns bring lift, movement, and delicacy. They keep darkness from becoming dull. Their fronds catch small shifts of light, respond to breeze, and create layers that make even a quiet corner feel inhabited. This is why they matter so much in design. They are not merely fillers for difficult spots. They are among the plants that define what a beautiful shade garden can be. Remove them from the picture, and something vital goes missing. The space loses a certain softness and age. It becomes less woodland, less atmospheric, less alive in motion. Ferns give shade its language. They translate dim light into texture and form, and once you know that, it is hard to imagine those spaces without them. Ferns pair age, elegance, and strangeness in one plant group. Very few plants combine these qualities so completely. They are ancient enough to carry deep time in their lineage, elegant enough to soften a room or woodland edge with effortless grace, and strange enough to keep surprising you once you look beyond the surface. They have hidden generations, spore patterns beneath their leaves, growth forms that range from lace to antlers, and histories tied to extinction, recovery, and human obsession. That mix is exactly why they are so captivating. If they were only old, they might feel remote. If they were only beautiful, they might feel decorative. If they were only strange, they might feel niche and obscure. But together, those qualities create something richer. Ferns feel timeless and slightly uncanny at once. They seem to belong fully to the present, while carrying a whisper of another world. That combination is rare, and it is why people keep returning to them. They satisfy curiosity, aesthetics, and wonder all at the same time. Botanists still debate relationships within some difficult fern lineages. For all their age and familiarity, ferns are not a solved puzzle. Some groups remain genuinely difficult to sort out because outward appearance can mislead. Older classifications do not always match newer evidence, and different lines of data can complicate the family picture. Genetic studies have clarified much, but they have also revealed that some long-assumed relationships are less straightforward than expected. In certain lineages, species that look alike may not be especially close, while others that seem quite different may prove more related than anyone guessed. This makes fern systematics feel like detective work. Every new study has the potential to reorganize parts of the tree. I love that uncertainty because it keeps the subject alive. These are not museum pieces locked into complete understanding. They are active scientific questions. A plant that seems modest in the field may sit inside an unresolved branch of evolutionary history, waiting for new data to refine the story. Ferns remain ancient, but their classification is still unfolding. Hybridization is common enough to make fern family trees tangled. In many groups of organisms, hybridization happens occasionally and causes some confusion. In ferns, it can be important enough to blur boundaries in a much more persistent way. Different species may cross, producing plants that carry features of both parents. Some hybrids are sterile. Others participate in more complex evolutionary patterns that eventually lead to stable new lineages. The result is a genealogy that can become gloriously messy. A fern that looks intermediate may truly be so. A group that seems neatly divided may hide crossing events in its past. This is one reason classification can be so challenging. The family tree is not always a clean branching diagram. Sometimes it has braided moments and reticulate patterns that force botanists to think more carefully about what species and relationships mean. For the listener, this should make ferns even more interesting. Their history is not only ancient, it is dynamically entangled. These plants do not always separate cleanly. Sometimes they meet, mix, and reshape the story. Some ferns can even reproduce without the usual fertilization step. This is one of the most startling ways ferns challenge our expectations. In certain species or populations, a new spore-producing plant can arise without the standard union of egg and sperm that most people would assume is necessary in the life cycle. The process is called apogamy, and it essentially allows the next stage to develop directly from the gametophyte under the right conditions. That is extraordinary, because it gives the plant another route forward when circumstances do not favor the ordinary reproductive sequence. It is as though the fern has found a biological shortcut, one that bypasses a step we might think is unavoidable. This does not make sexual reproduction irrelevant in the group, but it does reveal how flexible fern life cycles can be. And that flexibility is thrilling. The deeper you go into fern biology, the less rigid it seems. Even the basic rules of how a new generation begins can turn out to be more inventive than expected. Polyploidy has helped many fern lineages diversify in surprising ways. In many ferns, evolution has not always moved forward by tiny changes alone. Sometimes whole sets of chromosomes were duplicated, creating plants with extra genetic material to work with. That may sound abstract, but the effect can be profound. A lineage can suddenly carry more raw material for variation, more room for traits to shift, and more ways to remain distinct from close relatives. In ferns, this process has happened often enough to become one of the great hidden engines of their diversity. It helps explain why the group can be so rich, so variable, and so maddeningly complex to classify. One species may stand near another in the same ravine and look almost familiar, yet carry a very different genetic history. Polyploidy turns the fern story into something more than gradual refinement. It becomes a tale of occasional leaps in genetic possibility, where whole lineages may have gained new futures by duplicating the very blueprint from which they grow. Fern genomes can be unusually large and unexpectedly complex. For plants that often seem understated, ferns can carry astonishingly elaborate genetic archives. Some species possess remarkably large genomes, packed with far more DNA than many people would expect from a quiet plant in the shade. Size alone does not make a genome more advanced, but it does make it more intriguing. It suggests long histories of duplication, retention, and evolutionary experimentation written into the cells of these plants. A fern can look simple from a distance, yet inside each nucleus lies a record of deep complexity. That contrast is part of what makes them so compelling. The frond appears graceful and economical, while the genetic machinery behind it may be anything but spare. Scientists studying these genomes are not just cataloging numbers. They are peering into how ancient plant lineages persisted, diversified, and sometimes became wonderfully difficult to untangle. In that sense, each fern carries not only spores and leaves, but a vast hidden document of evolutionary history. One fern species became famous for cleaning arsenic from soil. Most people think of ferns as shade plants, not environmental specialists. Yet one species changed that perception dramatically. Chinese brake fern became famous because it can absorb unusually high amounts of arsenic from contaminated ground and store it in its tissues. That ability is extraordinary. Arsenic is toxic, dangerous to life in many forms, and a serious problem in some polluted soils. Yet this fern can draw it up through the roots and move it into the fronds in concentrations that would overwhelm many other plants. This has made it important in the study of phytomediation, which is the use of living plants to help clean damaged environments. There is something thrilling about that transformation. A plant once admired mainly for its form becomes part of a practical answer to pollution. The fern is no longer just a relic of ancient green worlds. It becomes a modern tool, quietly helping humans confront toxic legacies left in the earth. Some ferns accumulate metals that would poison many other plants. In certain habitats, the ground contains levels of metals that make life difficult for most vegetation. Yet some ferns can survive there and do more than survive. They absorb these elements into their tissues in concentrations that seem almost unbelievable. Such plants are called hyperaccumulators, and their existence changes how you think about both soil and survival. What looks like ordinary greenery may actually be handling nickel, arsenic, or other metals in ways that would cripple more sensitive species. This is not mere tolerance. It is a biological strategy so unusual that it has drawn interest from ecologists, physiologists, and environmental scientists alike. A fern growing on harsh ground may be doing hidden chemical work all the time, moving elements through its body, but most plants would avoid at all costs. That gives these species a strange kind of toughness. They are not simply living in difficult places. They are participating in the chemistry of those places with remarkable boldness. Tiny, floating ferns once helped cool the ancient Arctic Ocean. This sounds almost impossible, yet the idea is grounded in one of the most extraordinary episodes in fern history. During a warm interval in Earth's past, tiny floating ferns related to modern azolla spread across the surface of the Arctic Ocean in enormous blooms. At the time, the Arctic was not the frozen realm we know today. It was warmer, stratified, and capable of supporting this astonishing carpet of plant life. As those floating ferns grew and died, large amounts of organic material sank and were buried, locking away carbon that might otherwise have remained in circulation. That is the key to the drama. A small fern multiplied on the planetary scale may have helped draw down greenhouse gases from the atmosphere. The image is unforgettable. Not glaciers, not vast forests, but countless tiny floating plants drifting over ancient Arctic waters, quietly participating in one of the great climate shifts of Earth history. Ferns can be small, yet their consequences can be enormous. That ancient fern bloom may have helped change Earth's climate. The event is often discussed because of its scale and its implications. If enough carbon was removed from the atmosphere through the growth and burial of those floating fern masses, then the effect could have been global. Temperatures may have fallen over time, pushing the planet away from a warmer state. This possibility is fascinating because it gives ferns a role in climate history far beyond anything most people would imagine. We are used to thinking of climate as the domain of volcanoes, ice sheets, oceans, and atmospheric chemistry. Yet here the story includes small plants spreading over water and shifting the carbon balance through sheer abundance. It is a reminder that life does not merely respond to planetary conditions. Sometimes it alters them. The boom itself is long gone, but the idea it leaves behind is profound. Tiny plants acting across huge expanses may have nudged the Earth into a cooler future. Ferns were not just witnesses to climate history. They may have helped write it. Ferns can remind us that survival does not always require flowers. Modern plant beauty is often judged by bloom. We praise petals, fragrances, and fruit, and we sometimes forget that other strategies are possible. Ferns stand quietly outside that whole system. They never evolved flowers, never needed pollinating insects to perform that role, and never packaged their future in seeds or fleshy fruit. Yet they endured, spread, diversified, and still thrive across much of the planet. That makes them wonderfully subversive. They succeed by another route, one built on spores, life cycles, moisture, patience, and structural elegance. There is a lesson in that, and it reaches beyond botany. We are often drawn to the obvious signal, the brightest display, the loudest proof of life. Ferns answer with another model. They show that persistence can be subtle, that beauty can be built from form rather than bloom, and that one of the oldest successful plant groups on Earth achieved all of this without ever producing a single flower. They built beauty from spores, patience, water, and time. That may be the deepest charm of the whole group. Nothing about a fern's strategy is hurried. It begins with spores too small to notice, with hidden generations close to the ground, with moisture-dependent moments that require the right conditions, and with growth that often feels slow, deliberate, and ancient in tempo. Yet from those ingredients comes extraordinary beauty. A frond unfurls into lace. A colony spreads into a green tide. A ravine fills with patterns more graceful than many flowering displays. The fern does not achieve this with bold advertisement. It achieves it through process. The plant waits, times, persists, and gradually becomes magnificent. That combination of delicacy and patience is hard not to admire. It feels almost like another philosophy of life made visible in greenery. These plants were never built for spectacle in the usual sense. They were built for endurance and unfolding, and somehow that slow method produced forms so elegant that humans have been captivated by them for centuries. To study ferns is to meet an older style of plant life. They are not older simply because they have existed for a long time, though they have. They feel older in design, in rhythm, and in the way their life cycle still carries traces of a world where land plants were solving different problems than flowering plants solve now. When you study ferns, you encounter spores instead of seeds, hidden generations instead of one obvious body, and dependence on free water at crucial stages. You begin to see how life on land once worked before flowers came to dominate the imagination. This makes the group feel almost like a living archive. Not a fossil display behind glass, but an active, breathing style of plant life that still surrounds us. There is something deeply satisfying in that. The fern does not merely tell us that the past existed. It lets us touch a surviving version of it. To learn these plants is to step into another botanical logic, one still alive, still beautiful, and still remarkably effective. Ferns make the world feel deeper, older, and far more alive. A place changes when ferns are present. A rock face becomes more than stone. A woodland floor becomes layered, inhabited, and almost secretive. Even a damp wall in a city can seem touched by older processes once fronds begin to emerge from its cracks. Part of that effect comes from age. Ferns carry ancient associations whether we know the science or not. Part comes from form because their shapes suggest hidden growth, cool moisture, and places not fully exposed. And part comes from what they imply about life itself. Where ferns grow, conditions are often subtle rather than harshly obvious. There is enough water, enough shade, enough continuity for something intricate to persist. That makes their presence emotionally powerful. They deepen the atmosphere of a landscape. They suggest history, shelter, and the ongoing work of life beneath the surface of things. Few plants do that so consistently. Ferns do not just occupy places. They enrich the feeling of those places profoundly. Ferns were among the first plants to fascinate modern naturalists. Long before genetics, satellite ecology, or modern environmental science, naturalists were already drawn to ferns with special intensity. Part of that fascination came from accessibility. These plants could be found on walks, in hedgerows, ravines, ruins, and woods. Yet they were mysterious enough to reward close study. Their variety was obvious, but their reproduction was puzzling, and for a long time people did not fully understand how such plants multiplied. That combination was irresistible. A fern was common enough to encounter and strange enough to keep asking questions about. This made them ideal subjects for early field observation, collection, comparison, and amateur science. In a way, they help train people to look more carefully at the natural world. Identification, habitat, structure, and life cycle all became part of the appeal. Ferns were not simply pretty plants noticed by passing observers. They were among the species that helped turn casual curiosity into disciplined natural history. Some ferns can live for many years from a single crown. A crown is the central growing point from which fronds emerge season after season, and in some species it can persist for a very long time. Each year, new leaves rise, old ones fade, and the plant seems to renew itself while remaining the same individual. That continuity gives certain ferns a quiet dignity. They are not annual bursts of growth that vanish after one cycle. They are steady presences, returning from the same center with a rhythm that can continue for years. In a garden or forest, that persistence changes how you relate to them. A mature plant becomes almost companionable, a known being occupying the same patch through weather, damage, and changing light. The crown itself may thicken, rise, or become more substantial with time, carrying the memory of many seasons in its structure. This makes the fern feel less like a passing flourish and more like a durable resident, quietly enduring through repeated acts of unfolding and retreat. In the wild, a fern patch may be far older than it looks. What appears to be a modest stand of fronds can be deceptive. The visible leaves may be this year's growth, fresh and temporary, but the underlying organism or connected colony may have occupied that place for far longer than any observer would guess. Underground stems can persist, crowns can endure, and clonal spread can extend the life of a patch across many seasons, or even much longer. That means the fern cluster beside a stream or under a stand of trees may have a history hidden beneath the surface, one not visible in the bright new fronds of spring. I find that deeply evocative. The patch looks new because the leaves are new, yet the place has been held by the plant for years. It gives fern colonies a kind of secret age. They renew the visible part of themselves while preserving continuity below. What you see is current growth. What you are standing beside may be an old occupation of the same ground. Ferns can colonize ruins and make stone feel alive again. There is something almost poetic about the sight of fronds emerging from old mortar, broken stairways, cracked walls, or abandoned wells. Stone suggests hardness, age, and stillness. Ferns answer with softness, moisture, and growth. They slip into crevices where dust, rain, and organic matter have gathered, then begin turning dead surfaces back into habitat. A ruined structure that seemed purely architectural starts to feel biological again. The effect is powerful because it joins two different kinds of time. Human time is written in the ruin, in the collapse or abandonment of something built. Deep plant time is written in the fern, in the ancient lineage quietly reclaiming the gap. Together they create a scene that feels both historical and alive. This is why ferns can transform old stone so completely. They do not cover it with spectacle. They insinuate life back into it. a wall with ferns growing from it no longer feels finished. It feels reopened to the living world. Some species flourish beside waterfalls in constant spray. These are among the most atmospheric fern habitats on Earth. Near waterfalls, the air can remain saturated with mist, the rock stays cool and damp, and every surface feels as though it belongs to water as much as to land. Satin ferns are beautifully adapted to these conditions. They cling to wet stone, ledges, and shaded walls where spray arrives again and again, keeping tissues hydrated and temperatures moderated. To see them there is unforgettable. The plants seem to belong to a borderland, not fully terrestrial in spirit, yet not aquatic either. Their fronds catch droplets, shimmer in the moving air, and make the whole scene feel richer and more alive. This habitat also reveals how precisely some ferns are tuned to microclimate. Move a little farther from the spray and the conditions may change enough to exclude them. That precision adds to the fascination. The fern by the waterfall is not merely enjoying a beautiful place. It is living exactly where its strange requirements are perfectly met. Others survive in caves near the edge of darkness. Very few plants can live deep inside caves, because photosynthesis still requires light. Yet near entrances and in chambers where a dim green twilight remains, some ferns manage to persist. These are not plants of full darkness, but of the threshold where the outside world fades and underground conditions begin to take over. That liminal existence is captivating. The air is cool, moisture often lingers, and light arrives only weakly, yet it is enough. A fern at a cave mouth seems to occupy a border between two realms, one open and changing, the other stone-bound and hidden. It makes the plant feel almost like a guide into the underworld, still rooted in sunlight but willing to press farther than many others can. This setting changes the emotional tone of the fern entirely. No longer simply woodland greenery, it becomes part of a shadowed landscape of drip, mineral scent, and echo, surviving where the day is already beginning to disappear. A fern can live high in the canopy and never touch soil. This is one of the most astonishing ways the group escapes ordinary expectations. We tend to imagine plants as rooted in the ground, yet many epiphytic ferns spend their entire lives elevated on trunks and branches. They gather water from rain, mist, and intercepted debris. They root into bark crevices, trapped litter, and accumulations of organic material high above the forest floor. In a humid forest, this can create whole aerial gardens where ferns flourish among mosses, orchids, and other canopy dwellers. The image is thrilling. An ancient plant lineage that many people associate with damp ground is instead living in the upper architecture of the forest, suspended in light and air. And it does so without parasitizing the tree that supports it. This makes the canopy feel less like empty overhead space and more like another continent of plant life. A fern can belong to that elevated world completely, spending its whole existence above the earth without ever truly needing to touch it. Some rare ferns survive only on a single island or valley. That level of restriction makes them feel precious in a very real sense. A species can evolve into such a narrow habitat and become so specialized to its local conditions that its entire global existence is confined to one mountain system, one island, one ravine, or one valley. Imagine that. All the individuals of a species, all its genetic memory, all its future possibilities, held within one small part of the world. This kind of endemism is fascinating because it reveals how intimately plant evolution can be tied to place. A particular mist pattern, geology, elevation, or shelter history may create exactly the conditions a species needs, and nowhere else offers the same combination. But the beauty of this also carries fragility. If that one place changes too much, the species has nowhere broader to retreat. Such ferns remind us that biodiversity is not evenly spread across the map. Sometimes an entire lineage is entrusted to a single corner of Earth. Climate change now threatens many ferns tied to cool, wet habitats. For species dependent on shade, moisture, and stable temperatures, a warming and shifting world can be deeply disruptive. Cloud layers may change in elevation. Dry periods may lengthen. Heat may push beyond the range some ferns can tolerate, especially those confined to mountaintops, narrow valleys, or spray zones with little room to move. This matters because many fern habitats are not easily replaceable. A cool ravine lost to drying is not simply recreated nearby. A cloud forest shifting upslope may eventually run out of mountain. In that sense, climate change challenges some ferns not only with stress, but with shrinking geography. The threat feels especially poignant because these are ancient survivors. Lineages that pass through immense stretches of Earth history can still be vulnerable when rapid modern change outpaces the conditions they depend on. That does not make the story hopeless, but it does make it urgent. Ferns connect us to deep time, and now deep time itself seems to be asking for our care. Ferns are living proof that ancient things can still thrive quietly. That may be the most beautiful lesson they offer. We live in a world that often celebrates what is new, loud, and immediate, yet ferns represent another kind of success. They are old beyond ordinary comprehension, and still they continue. They do not dominate headlines. They do not announce themselves with flowers or fruit. They persist through shade, moisture, spores, renewal, and patience. They spread over rocks, rise in rainforests, cling to ruins, float on water, and wait in the understory with a calm confidence earned across immense time. To stand beside one is to feel that endurance made visible. Not dramatic immortality, but steady continuation. Ancient does not always mean fading. Sometimes it means refined, tested, and still wholly alive. That is why ferns feel so moving. They carry a past older than our species can truly grasp, yet they remain part of everyday landscapes. They whisper that survival can be modest, elegant, and enduring all at once. As we come to the end of our journey through the world of ferns, it's worth pausing for a moment and letting it all settle. We began in a time long before flowers, before grass, even before the first dinosaurs, when these ancient plants were already shaping the earth. And from there, we wandered through rainforests and ravines, across bare rock and drifting water, into hidden life cycles, delicate spirals, and forests built without a single bloom. We followed them through deep time, through extinction and recovery, through quiet persistence and surprising resilience. And all the while, they remained what they have always been, patient, intricate, and quietly alive. If you picture them now, perhaps you can see them more clearly. Fronds arching in soft layers, coils slowly unfurling, green shapes resting in shade or clinging to stone or suspended high in the canopy where the air stays cool and still. And now, there's nothing more you need to do. Let your body grow a little heavier. Let your breathing slow, just slightly, and allow your thoughts to drift, like spores carried on a gentle current, settling wherever they may. If you're still awake, and you'd like to continue, there's another journey waiting for you on the screen. Something just as calm, just as curious, ready to carry you a little further. But if not, simply rest here for a while. Sleep well, and good night.